We're back with more on the chaos on Capitol Hill. Joining us now is South Carolina Congressman Mick Mulvaney. He's one of the Republicans pushing for a more conservative speaker. Congressman, let's start with Paul Ryan. He's talked about a lot. Would you consider supporting him?
I would consider it. First, he's got to make a decision to run. And then I think he's got to convince me and some other folks that if he were in charge, that the place would be different. We're supporting Dan Webster right now as a House Freedom Caucus because Dan was able to convince us that if he were the Speaker, the House would be run differently, that members would have a chance to participate in the process. We don't have that now. The committees would have a chance to do work. They don't have that opportunity now. So we're looking for more of a process and principles than we are a person. But Paul certainly has a lot of respect across the Republicans in the House, and I think he could be a good Speaker.
We have here a list of the questions that you put forward, that the Freedom Caucus has put forward to the Speaker candidates. There's 21 on this set of sheets, and then there's a reform of the conference rules that you're looking for. Does Paul Ryan have to answer these sets of questions before you would think of him as a...
I think Paul's probably answered all those questions. I mean, Paul's a pretty conservative guy. He's not as conservative as some, more conservative than others, but we probably know where Paul stands on most of those issues.
So he wouldn't have to go through the business...
Well, I think he should come and meet with us. I really do. And I imagine that he would want to do that if he's going to run, just to have the opportunity to sit down and talk with him. Again, the issues on those lists deal primarily with rules changes, the way that our conference is run. And that's what we're trying to reform through this process.
If Paul Ryan does think about running, you know, it appears, based on people I've talked to, that he would want to go forward with the full support, at least, you know, close to the 247 number of Republicans, rather than going to the floor. This is what Mr. McCarthy was worried about, going to the floor and not being able to get the 218 that's required to be Speaker. Do you see a scenario in which that happens, in which everybody can come together? I
think we get real close. If Paul's able to convince us, and I believe that Paul wants the same changes that we do. By the way, we had a conference meeting this week about discussing the rule changes. It was attended by more than 100 members of our conference. This is not just a conservative complaint. I know that Paul is a committee guy. He likes when the committees are allowed to work. So I think he's already sort of mentally committed to many of the same things that we want. If he can convince us of that, I think we could deliver an overwhelming majority of the House. I don't think anybody's going to get 247. It's just not reasonable.
Here's the thing about Paul Ryan. He doesn't want the job. So why would he want to convince you of something that he doesn't want, a job he doesn't want?
Sometimes you have to, sometimes you just need to do it, right? The country needs you, the party needs you. And if he decides he wants to do it, that's great. If he doesn't, that's fine. There's probably other people in our conference who could unite us. But certainly if we went down the list right now and said, okay, who could unite the party in the House, certainly Paul comes right to the head of the list.
What do you say to people who, some Republicans who look, and some other members who say the country looks at the House of Representatives and the Republicans running it and say this is chaos, they can't run the place? It's
not true. I know it looks like that because there's a media circus and there was folks running up and down the hallways with cameras, but on Friday, I had a hearing on the World Bank. I had a hearing on school choice in Washington, D.C. I had a meeting with Rand Paul to go over how we might want to handle the debt ceiling, and we passed a bill out of the House to allow crude oil exports. It was a busy day. It wasn't chaos.
But it's busy, but then there's that blockage. And so let's talk about an issue, say the debt limit. It's coming November 5th. The government runs out of its ability to borrow. What's your opinion on that? This fight we have had again and again.
The debt ceiling has traditionally been used as a way to sort of sit back and say, okay, how are we supposed to pay for this? I describe appropriations season as Christmas, and debt ceiling is sort of late January, early February when the bills come in. And it's the right thing for us to do and stand back and say, okay, now we ran up this debt. What are we going to do to try and make sure it doesn't happen again? That is the right reasons to look at the debt ceiling, and we should do that. We should raise it, but we should raise it as part and parcel of a larger package to solve some of the reasons that we have to raise the debt ceiling again.
Okay, but you want it to be raised just quickly.
I want it to be raised as part of a package that actually fixes the reason that we have a debt ceiling problem.
All right, Congressman, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, John.
We'll be back in a moment.